Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Tillman with another Tillman's Take. So what I want to do is I want to break down the situation today out of Oklahoma City where you have an officer that's actually chasing a fleeing felon from a local state prison there. So as he's chasing this guy, the fleeing felon runs towards a housing community and that officer gives chase. Let's see what happens next.
21 Southwest. I got one trying to run away from me on east, going eastbound Park Place. Shots fired.
You shot him off.
Stay down.
Dying, bitch.
Stay down.
I can't move him. Oh. 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 Help. Oh. Oh. Kill
Don't you move, man. You reach that bar again, I'll put another couple in you.
Kill it. It's wrong. Oh. Dump. You. You have no energy.
Quit moving! Give me your other hand.
It's dead.
Give me your other hand.
That's it. Ow! 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 They're not.
So as you guys can see, as that officer rounds that corner to where that suspect is running, the officer decides to pull out his taser and try to tase his suspect. Now, the one thing I want to highlight specifically with this video is that taser was ineffective. And the reason I want to highlight that is because, you know, one of the things I get in my comments so much is how come an officer couldn't use a taser? How come he didn't tase a suspect? We do tase people, but I want you guys to realize is that our tasers don't work 100% of the time. When they do, very, very effective tools. But when they don't, it kind of amps up a suspect. If they're trying to utilize some type of force against an officer, it amps them up that much more. And then that's exactly what happened in this situation. Let's go back to the part of the video as soon as the officer uses his taser and see what that suspect does again. So once that taser was deployed and it was ineffective, we don't know why it was ineffective. It could have been that the tasers didn't penetrate the clothing. It could have been that the taser or the prongs may have missed the suspect. We don't know, but it didn't work. And so once the officer deploys the taser, that suspect now starts to advance on that officer. And not only is he advancing on the officer, he's advancing on him with the tire iron. Now, I don't know if you're able to see that clearly in this video, but the suspect did have a tire iron in his hand and he's running towards that officer now with it. So what the officer decides to do, as any other officer would do, is try to gain distance or try to gain space from that suspect. So not only he can transition to another weapon, but also he can try to hopefully slow the situation down. The officer transitions to his firearm and ultimately makes the choice of utilizing deadly force. Now, thank God in this situation that the officer wasn't hurt and the suspect actually ends up living. When the suspect gets shot to the ground, he goes down onto his stomach and the officer stands by and waits for his other partners to arrive so they can take him into custody. Let's watch.
Shots fired.
You shot him off.
Stay down.
Dying, bitch.
Stay down.
I can't move him. Oh.
Now, for some of you guys, that might have been hard to watch. And the reason that's hard to watch is because what we don't see is that the suspect is actually shot in his arm. And as the officer takes his hand and tries to take him into custody, you can see that his arm bends in a way that it probably shouldn't bend. And so the question I also get is, why do we still take or put handcuffs on people after we shot them? How come we don't, immediately try to run up there and try to start saving and all the other stuff? We do, and we want to try to go into life-saving measures as quickly as we can, but you also realize is we can't also compromise our officer safety. Just because a person is down on the ground does not automatically say that they are no longer a threat. I recently watched a video where a suspect is actually shot to the ground, and as the officers approach, he actually starts to turn towards that officer with the gun still in hand, and the officer shoots him again. And so just because a suspect is down on the ground doesn't necessarily mean they're out of the fight. For all we know, the suspect may be trying to, ambush the officer when he walks up, turns around and shoots the officer as he gets closer. It could happen. We've seen some crazy things in our profession. And so that's why we will stand by and still handcuff a suspect after he has been shot to make sure they're no longer a threat. Once the suspect is then handcuffed, then we will immediately go into life-saving measures, apply a tourniquet, render CPR, whatever it may be, so that way we can hopefully save that suspect's life. But that's one of the reasons why we won't utilize, or why we won't just immediately go up there, try to start doing safety measures right away, because we don't know if that suspect is now out of the fight. So, you know, as we can see in this situation, guys, this was a deadly situation, obviously. And, you know, thank God the officer was able to go home to his family, and that suspect probably ended up going back to state prison. But situations, like I've said in the past, can escalate from 0 to 60 so quickly. And so these are just some of the realities that we face in our day-to-day job. Not to say that they happen every day, but it is to say that they can happen any day. Thanks again, and God bless.